Gaze reading where the greats drop by. Trendy authors tell us all the who, what, and why. Anyone can listen, cause we're spoiler free. Gaze reading, from Pulitzer stars to book club picks, where the curious minds can get their fix. So you say you're not gay, well that's okay. There's something for everyone. Gaze reading.
Hello and welcome to Gaze Reading. I'm your host, Jason Blitman, and Happy New Year. Welcome to the first episode of Season 4. I can't believe that we are already we've been through enough to be at some semblance of a Season 4. Thank you so much for joining me and for being here on this super fun and exciting journey. On today's episode, I am stoked because it's a collab. I have the folks who host the Book Riot Podcast here with me. They are fantastic. If you do not know them, they are Jeff O'Neal and Rebecca Schinsky. You will fall in love with them as quickly as I did, and also fall in love with their podcast as quickly as I did. Go check out the Book Riot Podcast over wherever you get your podcasts. I am on their show today talking about the queer books that I'm most looking forward to in 2025 over on their podcast today. They're talking to me today about what they're looking forward to in 2025. And then my guest gay reader today is Brad Summerville, also known as Brad Bought a Book over on Bookstagram, telling me about the books that he's looking forward to. So today is a day where your TBR is going to get all sorts of messed up. Apologies in advance, because that's what it is. All of the books that we're super excited about. You can watch this episode over on YouTube. You could like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you are so inclined, leave a 5-star review, particularly on Apple Podcasts, which is a little bit of a pain in the butt to get to, but it is super, super helpful for the algorithm and to help other people find Gaze Reading. All of the links to all of the things are in the show notes, but also in the link tree on our Instagram. You could follow us over on social media on Instagram at Gaze Reading. We have a fantastic giveaway happening right now, 2 of my favorite family dramas of the year. You can go win copies of those over on Instagram. And if you are new to Gaze Reading, you have not heard me say this yet, I am so excited to be partnering with Aardvark Book Club to provide an exclusive introductory discount. New members in the United States can join today, enter the code Gaze Reading at checkout, and get their first book for $4 with free shipping. That's aardvarkbookclub.com, 2 A's, and use the code Gaze Reading at checkout. The link also to that is in the show notes. There are a handful of really exciting books coming out today. A couple off the top of my head are Sweet Fury by Sash Bischoff, The 3 Lives of Kate K by Kate Fagan, Homeseeking by Carissa Chen, and Playworld by Adam Ross. I am so excited for each and every one of those books. And again, you're about to get messed up, your TBR, because here are Jeff O'Neal and Rebecca Schinsky talking to me about what they are most looking forward to in 2025. Now recording is in progress.
Okay.
Jeff, you were about to say something so nice and kind, and I wanted to.
We got to get that on.
I didn't want you to have to recreate it.
Yeah. Now I know it's being recorded. I'll have to put a little salt in the sugar. But I was gonna say thanks for having us. We don't usually go on another show at Wonder Twins Unite. We'll try not to overwhelm and do our shtick on your shtick. We want to do your thing rather than ours.
I want you to do your shtick so that everyone goes and listens to the Book Riot podcast, because you're different than Gaze Reading, and that's what makes this so fun.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
Rebecca and Jeff, welcome to Gaze Reading.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having us. We're really excited to be here.
Yeah, we're
so excited that you made your bed.
Oh, just calling you out right from the top. We should have had
Welcome
Jason.
to Gaze Reading.
Freight culture over here will not take that kind of assault.
I do feel the need
this
to
is my
defend
culture,
Jeff here.
not your costume.
This is, I happen to know that Jeff's unmade bed is the product of his partner, who she refuses to tolerate a made bed.
Really?
So we can't even blame the unmade bed situation on the whole straight man-ness of Jeff.
I mean,
tell me,
the assumption is not the worst one, but yes, my dearly beloved, she likes to, I guess, crawl in like a hamster. Just it has to be ready and messy every time. So that's the way we do it that way.
I fully respect knowing your brand
Mhm.
and leaning into it. Is it an excuse?
You know,
never let a good excuse
no.
go unused.
I know her. This lady, she's an architect. She is
Oh my God.
precise. She knows what she wants. And it's kind of surprising in the constellation of her personality that the thing she prefers is an unmade bed. So I'm going to go. Like,
So
I don't miss an
funny.
opportunity to razz Jeff, but I'm gonna put this one on her.
You got to give her wide berth because she's formidable.
We should just talk about her this whole episode.
Yeah, she's going to be mortified that we're talking about her and that the unmade bed is in the background. I guess is another thing, Jason. Like, we come from the early days of podcasting where video wasn't a thing. So I'm used to being a mind and a brain in a jar appearing.
Well, that was me for a
someone can
long
see-
time. And then when I suddenly saw numbers on YouTube, I was like, I gotta keep putting things on YouTube.
See,
Yeah,
God
we're
forbid.
headed that direction in early 2025, and we're
Yeah.
both getting our heads around it.
Yeah,
I feel
I'm gonna
you.
need sort of like lifestyle Botox for my whole situation to clean all of
Lifestyle
this to do that.
Just get yourself a good Zoom background.
What a
there
good
you
book
go.
title.
Yeah,
Lifestyle Botox.
I'm sure. I bet we could go get 100-figure advance for that right now. Harper Lifestyles. They have their AI listening to us. And they're like, that's a thing. We're gonna do that.
It is perhaps a most anticipated book of 2028.
Oh, that's a hell of a
You know
segue.
what? We've been doing this longer than a year and a half. And
One of my
record.
favorite things is a segue.
Yeah, it really. Is.
Jason, can we curse?
Yeah,
didn't-
sure.
okay.
Good. We don't curse on our own show, so I'm gonna have to flip the bit.
I don't curse a
been-
ton, but I'm marked as explicit just in case.
Okay.
We should probably do that.
Yeah. We've been letting ourselves off the leash a little more the last couple of years. So
All right.
Yeah, well, now's the time to practice. You can
yeah, great.
let it go.
I know I was like, hell of a thing. And I was like, can I say that?
Do you not say hell of a thing on the Book Riot
We say
podcast?
hell, but then I had to
Okay.
you never know other people's audiences.
Yeah.
You've occasionally.
Fair. Totally fair. Okay, so our book that we're all going to write is going to be a most anticipated 2028. But what about 2025?
2025.
Wait, do the two of you know what your most anticipated are?
No.
Good.
So
I
we
love
try to
this.
fly blind as much as
Yes.
possible to surprise each other. So I have my
Yes.
4 picks, and then I have backups in case Jeff and I overlapped. And I'm
my God.
Only
positive.
4 picks. Okay, well,
You-
someone did the minimum. Okay, I hear.
I
Oh,
told
oh,
you that
oh,
Jason said
oh,
3 to 4. Do you not read my messages?
Well, look, listen. Do you spend
That's
all
fine.
of your paycheck every month, or do you save a little extra just in case? I'm saying
I have extra
done
in the
your
tank.
homework.
I have
got
bonus
9.
picks.
Whoa, 9. Okay. Well, wait, I have an important question.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
What makes a most anticipated book?
I'll let
Mm.
Rebecca take that.
Well, I took I went personal on this one because you get
Yeah.
both the lists of like big titles that are going to be splashy that you should pay attention to, or you
Mhm.
can go the route of like, what am I personally excited to read?
Mhm.
And then sometimes on our show, we do a seasonal draft where we try to pick like a variety pack of the 10 books for the season that we think a
Mhm.
general reader would be most interested in. And those are all different tasks. So I went for 4 to 9, I guess, of the ones that I am personally looking forward to reading that are maybe a little under the radar because I
Mhm.
always do want to take a chance to talk about books that aren't
Yes.
going to be splashed out like in
Love.
publicity campaigns also.
So, go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, Jeff, what about you? What
I was
makes an
gonna say,
anticipated
we
book?
spend a lot of time in Edelweiss, so I don't know how insider your listeners are. I'm sure, Jason, you spend some time in it, but it's basically the tool that people that work in books use to look at what's coming out. And I was rage slacking Rebecca with some seasonal fraud about people having their January 2025 book releases in their fall 2024 calendar. There's a reason I have as much hair as I have when it comes to dealing with Edelweiss at this point. So we do this a lot. We live it a lot. And I was doing some other stuff. So what I did is I pull hundreds of books out of that from my own spreadsheet. And so what I did for this, Jason, is I looked, maybe here's some stuff that I'm interested that maybe your audience would be listening. I don't know. So
Yeah.
there's some LGBTQ forward stuff I'm interested in anyway. I didn't go
Ooh.
proactively cherry pick anything for this particular show.
Yeah.
And then a couple things that are like me, that are actually sort of here just to make Rebecca laugh. And if you laugh too, Jason, that's great. But a lot of what I do in these is trying to find something that will surprise, delight, and maybe shock Rebecca that my attention to this particular topic or title exists at
Wow.
all. I'm known for
Jeff
being
is-
able to read about anything.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to stay on brand.
The most boring possible single subject histories Jeff will read. A history of writing in 10 pencils. Like
Yep.
If there's not
Great.
already a history of pride and 12 parades, we should write that. We'll read it.
It did not make my list,
June
Rebecca,
2028.
but there is a book coming out next season called Carpet Diem, A History of the World in 12 Rugs.
He's going to read it.
Oh
Oh my God.
already sent a request.
Well, carpet diem, everyone. But in terms of like literal, what draws you to it? Is it a cover? Is it a log line? Is it an author? Is it a genre? Is it a general aesthetic? Is it a publisher pushing it?
Yes,
All of
all
it.
those things.
Yeah.
It kind of
Sure.
depends, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like
You
we want to
know.
think that we're, above the marketing tactics of publishers just because we know how they
No.
work. But like a blurb will work on me sometimes, even though I know that like the authors just have the same agent or they went to the MFA program together and that author blurb, like this author blurbed that author's last book. Like you can see how the sausage is made and you're still going to like have the biscuits and gravy.
Yeah. Though I will say, I know enough authors now where when I see blurbs, I can reach out and be like,
Yeah.
should I read this
Mhm.
book?
That's right.
Yeah. The was this blurb a favor or is it a
Right.
real thing? Is
I will say
that's a good one.
99% of the time the answer is yes, read the book. It was so good. So that's a good thing.
That is
Yeah, authors
that's
are an
that's
easy
great.
touch. They're a soft touch.
Yeah.
Which I
Yeah.
understand.
I can especially fall also to like I'm prey to the pop culture comps. If someone is like, this is like Megan Abbott meets Yellow Jackets, I'll be like, yes.
Interesting.
If you can really capture the vibe of a different kind of piece of media that I liked, the vibe of a movie and map it onto a book, that if it works, that works for me. But if it's a lie, I'm so mad.
I was just going to say, I was talking to somebody about a book coming out this year that had a comp that I just did not agree with. I've read the book.
Oh, comp fraud is real.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
out there. It's
And
I know we really
it
need
just-
to do something.
It's
about it.
unfortunate because it sets expectations
It
and it sets
is.
the book up for failure. If I
Yep.
was expecting a different book,
Yeah.
I think I would have liked the book more. And
Yep.
so unfortunately, the bar was just like astronomically high. Great
My
example.
like eternal rant about this is that comp fraud values sales over reader satisfaction. And so
Yeah.
you get the sale, but then you get a bunch of negative Goodreads reviews because it's not what it said on the tin. And it
Yeah.
sets the author up for folks not to
Yeah.
pick up their next book because they got the wrong vibe. Like the Gone Girl comps are the worst of this. Like we're almost 15 years past Gone Girl. We're still getting comps for it. And Where the Crawdads Sing is one that I see trotted out
Yeah.
a whole lot. Like if it touches nature at all, it must be for readers of Where the Crawdads Sing.
Right, exactly. Well,
We can do
similarly,
better than
I
that.
loved Friday Night Lights, the TV show,
Mhm.
and
So
I
did we.
love Frederick Backman's work. But when I was told that Beartown was Friday Night Lights, but for hockey, I was like, give it to me. I cannot wait. Read it and was very
Yeah,
disappointed.
that's a lie.
That's a tough one. Well, and
Yeah.
I guess it's a double-edged sword, right? Because they want people to read the book. It's like if you give an accurate comp that's going to have fewer people pick it up, you roll the dice and you hope
Yeah.
it works. The things we get excited about, we do like a good novel kind of comp. Like if it's something like makes our brain record scratch, that's always a good sign. We've been
Yeah.
doing this long enough. We've read enough books that we tend to stay away from. And Rebecca, I'll speak for you momentarily and correct my avoidably barbaric simplifications. But we don't read a lot of category stuff. So like a category mystery, category romance, spy thrillers. We're not, I don't know, habitual, consistent readers of pretty straight genre fiction. We like
Mhm.
something that's new. We like mix-ups. We like mashups. We like literary fiction with a twist is probably our shared wheelhouse more than anything. We like a good memoir. We do like a good nonfiction, narrative nonfiction. A bloodless crime is a shared passion, right? You're
Mhm.
going to steal something. You're going to con someone out of something. White collar crime, I'll read about it all day. I am a coward, and I don't like the violence and the gore stuff. So we're not doing a lot of true crime and serial killer kinds of
Yeah.
things. And we have our authors that we like, and then it's so hard because so much new is debut, and you don't know anything
Mhm.
about the author, and you want to give something a try, and yet there's so many books to read that we find ourselves, I think, thinking we don't take chances ahead of time. We need some secondary indication, like we have some people in our own lives, or Book Riot itself, that do a lot of that more. And once they've gone and said the water's okay, then we'll jump in after them. But we tend to shy away from. I don't think you're going to see on my list anything that's like so completely new to me that I'm just like, let's take her out for a spin and see what happens.
Well, Jeff, you have me on the edge of my seat.
Well, okay. So how do you want to go? You want to go back and forth? Because Rebecca, we may have some of the
Sure.
similar ones here. Do you have picks for this too, Jason, or is it just Rebecca and I serving
I-
tennis balls at you?
all around me. So
Oh.
I'm on the Book Riot podcast talking
Yes,
about my
yes.
anticipated
Oh,
books
okay.
of
I didn't realize
2025.
that
So
was going to be the shtick for the return.
my
home.
listeners, go
Okay.
on over to the
All
Book
right,
Riot
gotcha.
podcast, and you can hear what I have to say about what I'm
Yes.
excited about.
So, Rebecca, you go first because we
Sure.
have some of the same ones. I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, this is an author that I love who does a thing that I think we need much more of, Linda Holmes. It's called Back After This, coming out February 25th. You may know Linda Holmes from NPR's Pop Culture Happy Hour show, podcast, whatever. This is her third contemporary rom-com. I'm not sure we technically call them romances because they don't necessarily end with a happily ever after, but it's a rom-com vibe.
Right.
And her heroines are middle-aged, which is wonderful. We don't get enough middle-aged characters, especially in romance. This one is also about a podcaster.
Oh.
A woman, Cecily Foster, who loves to make podcasts and has a disastrous relationship with a colleague who stole her heart and her ideas. And then other things happen in her life. I'm trying not to know very much about it because I've been delighted by Linda Holmes. And her first book, Evie Drake Starts Over, is one that I would have missed if not for a good recommendation from Jeff.
Ooh, we love good recommendations. And also, I'm a big fan of Just a Logline. I can't
Yeah.
read. If I read more than that, it starts to spoil
Yeah.
everything.
If I go next, so I thought you might have this, Rebecca. We've talked about Kevin. We talk about Kevin Wilson all the time on the BR
That's on my
podcast.
list,
He
too.
has
Yeah.
a book coming out May 13th, so a little later into the season. Rebecca and I were talking about this. January and February are sort of weak this year, and maybe I'm just not finding the right stuff. But I didn't see a lot for January and February. But Kevin Wilson, my half serious suggestion is to change your name, Kevin Wilson, because it's too easy to forget. I've suggested Kevin the Lumberjack. Call him Lumberjack. It's just hard to remember. And he writes commercial, zany, weird, really funny stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But the branding is tough around books and authors writ large, unless you become super, super huge or you've got an interesting name that people can remember. But all of his books are pretty weird. Now is not the time to panic. Nothing to see here. The Family Fang is highly recommendable. This is his road trip book, Run for the Hills. I don't even know if I said the title. I got so excited about saying how Kevin name. And it's sort of, I wish people knew more about Kevin. It comes out of a really generous place. I feel like there's a lot of people.
He's so great.
Is this the beginning of it? Kevin the Lumberjack Wilson? Have we just done it?
Tried. Maybe your folks can get this going because I can't make this stuff go viral. Maybe
He's
your
so
people
zany.
can.
Okay.
It's so good.
So zany for someone named Kevin Wilson. It's kind of a joke inside of a joke. This is also something I care about, Jason, which you may not know. 256 pages. So it's not you're not going to be around for 100 million years.
Bless.
Yeah.
Love. I love a short book. I like a long book, but give me a short book.
Yeah,
I love a
when in
long
doubt,
book.
Yes.
That is an ultimate page turner.
Yeah.
I loved Chris Whitaker's All the Colors of the Dark because it's
Oh.
600 pages and every chapter is 3 pages long.
Okay, I've been waiting for someone to tell me that book is worth reading because I've been holding off because it is 600 pages long.
It is one of my
so-
favorites of the year.
Okay, sold.
Must. And I listened to your favorites of the year. We have some similar overlapping taste. So
Okay.
yeah, highly recommend.
The other thing I
I'm
pay
sold on that.
attention to on this, just before I let Kevin Wilson go, is print runs. And there's a bunch of print run fraud in Edelweiss. But 150,000 copy print run for a book like this, even if that's half of what they say it is, that's a significant
It's a big number
for a book like this.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was just talking to my husband last night about season planning,
Yeah.
and it's impossible to sort of project things. And when you see a print run, even if it may be a little fudged,
Right.
you're like, oh,
Yeah.
Just
It's a good
put a
clue.
pin in this. It's sort of
Yeah.
directionally right. It's maybe accurate if not precise.
The new
in how this
Jojo
thing-
Moyes, 400,000 copies.
Well, Onyx Storm I've never seen a 2. It's a 2 million. And that's just for the standard edition.
That's
Sorry,
the third Rebecca Yarros, right?
Yeah, we're not picking that. We're not
No.
the romance.
Barbara Streisand's book, I think, was the highest I'd ever seen, and I think it was 1 million.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. There was
Wow.
one of that new Hoover. It Ends With Us was 1.5, but I'd never seen a 2 million
Yeah.
before this particular one.
Oh
Dang.
my God.
Anyway, that's enough. On
So it's
Kevin
a short
Wilson.
book. We love.
Yeah,
We
right.
love.
We love it's a short book. We're happy.
Yes.
Kevin Wilson is a shared fave of ours. So I'm glad you mentioned that one, Jeff. My next one is Harriet Tubman Live in Concert by Bob the Drag
Yeah.
Queen. You're holding it
There
up.
you go.
Yay. I'm so excited about this because, as Jeff was just saying, like, this seems new and it's gonna be weird. And new and weird, if it's done well, will be great. And the
New
publishers,
and weird and short.
And
oh,
short.
beautiful. The Publishers Weekly review, like, it got a star. The Publishers Weekly review was a rave. So I was like, okay, it's new and weird and it's good. It's not just a gimmick because the pitch does kind of sound like a gimmick. So this is a spec fic in which heroes from history like unexplainably return to the present to try to like help us get our shit back together. And Harriet Tubman and 4 of the enslaved people that she led to freedom have come back, and they want to tell their story by way of a hip hop album. I am 1,000,000% here for this.
Sold. Done. Period. I know. I'm sorry. And it's literally under 250 pages. So
Even better.
even
All
better.
debut novels should be under 250 pages. Like, you're trying to break somebody out, you got to make the barrier to entry low.
I know.
All right, I've got
Agreed.
one that's also 256 pages, weirdly. My next pick here. This comes out June 3rd from Norton. Both Rebecca and I like food writing. And John Birdsall's last book was a biography of James Beard and won the James Beard Award. I don't know. That feels like insider trading.
That
I'm
does
not
feel
sure if
insider
that's
trading.
fair. But it's also the big food award. I don't know how you get around that. But his next book is called What is Queer Food? How We Served a Revolution. And it's about the influence of queer chefs, queer cuisine, and brunch culture on European and American food. Sort of, it doesn't really look, it doesn't give me a beginning sort of time, but I'm guessing sort of mid 20th century onward. I'm hoping there's an audiobook because I will devour this. Excuse the extended culinary metaphor on audio. But Birdsall's terrific, and this is one of my nonfiction summer picks I'm really looking forward to.
Interesting. Oh, I'm excited. Now my mind immediately goes dirty, which is not good.
Tell us more.
No, don't,
Just
or
like-
don't.
Queer food. But my problem with food related books is I want to eat the food.
Yeah.
I can't. I have a hard time watching British Bake Show. I have a hard time watching because I want to eat it. I still do,
Mhm.
but that's my
Did
my
you
issue.
read what was it called? The Raw Dog, the hot dog book last
The hot
year?
dog.
no. But the cover is ridiculous.
Yes, it's amazing. And one of my friends puts it in his bookstore with a shelf talker that is like, this is funny and fascinating and gross and surprisringly horny. And it's
Oh
like,
my
this is
God.
kind of the perfect pitch for a food
I
book.
should listen to that audio. So funny. All right, Rebecca, what do you have
Oh,
next?
my next one is Stop Me If You've Heard This One. It's a novel by Kristen Arnett, coming out March 18th. Kristen, you have this one too, Jason.
What print is that? I missed that, Rebecca. What imprint?
What
Riverhead.
month? It's Riverhead.
Yeah,
Wait, that's what month?
March.
March 18th.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we can't even blame the whole like seasonal bleed, which
I
can I
know.
take us on like a brief aside to share one of my
Please.
favorite publishing facts that I just learned
Yes.
this year? So Jeff and I have ranted about the inconsistency of publishing seasons enough on our show where like one house has like spring, summer, fall, and winter. When does fall start? None of the houses can agree. Some of them just have like spring, winter, and fall. Like
It's like a Nate Bargatze sketch.
it
It's
is
like nobody knows.
completely like just inconsistent, drives me nuts. And we got an email from a listener this year who was like, this exists because of like the Erie Canal. And it's because like back when books got shipped on actual ships down the Hudson River and in the Erie Canal, you had to ship them either before the winter, before everything froze, which was the fall list.
Uh-huh.
Like they would ship all of those books in the fall from like September through February releases. And then they had the winter or spring list for after the thaw. And since we don't ship books that way anymore, there's been bleed about what the seasons are. But that is where we got like that is why originally there were publishing seasons.
Also, we love listeners.
We do.
Thanks,
They're so
listeners.
smart.
Yes.
And they know all kinds of random things. It's wonderful.
Though I will say, I got into a conversation with Roxanne Gay about our mutual frustration with peeling garlic and requested people to send in their advice. And people did, but it was like the
Mhm.
sort of things we already know, like crush it with the knife and peel it
Yeah.
off, but then your hands get sticky. No one came in with like the number one best
Yeah.
solution. So I'm still on the hunt in case
Isn't there like a
anyone is
little
listening.
there's like a little tube kind of device that you put the clove of garlic in and you like shake it and the friction takes the paper off.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I don't have this problem. I don't mind touching garlic, but I've seen
No, it's not
this
about. It's just like then you
It's
get
so
it
annoying.
sticks
Yes.
on you, and you have to.
Yeah.
It's a lot
Yeah,
of.
it's a whole
okay.
thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But there is a thing.
Okay.
We'll take it offline.
Okay. I've been losing sleep over this. It's fine.
So, Stop Me If You've Heard This One by Kristen Arnett is about a woman who is a professional clown in Orlando, Florida. And if you don't know Kristen Arnett, she is one of the great novelists of Florida. There's a few of them who like really
There's
capture
another one on my list.
the vibe
Mm.
of Florida and how special and strange and just wacky it can
I
be.
grew up there.
Oh, okay.
I did.
And so Kristen Arnett, you get Florida lesbians, and this one is a Florida lesbian who's a clown, and I don't need to know anything else.
Nothing else. That's all we need. Jeff, what's wrong?
I
Your
was trying
brow
to
is very
think- I was trying to
furrowed.
think, do I want to go Florida? Do I want to put a hat on a hat and go my Florida pick? I think I'll switch it up and save it just for a
Oh,
minute.
okay.
I think for January, the book of the month to beat, sort of all the way around. I'm putting Onyx Storm to the side. That's almost bigger than books at this point and
Yeah.
largely outside of our interest. But Nnedi Okorafor's book, The Death of the Author, comes out January 14th from William Morrow. There was a lot of news about she got a huge advance for it, and she's been writing for a while, but like there's something special about this one. The logline is pretty interesting, in which the main character writes a best-selling kind of culture-shaping book, but it becomes such a hit that it gets away from her. And like, what are all the manifestations or ramifications of something like that happening? Which is super interesting, given someone who's blurbing it is George R.R. Martin, who knows about the narrative getting away from me, from him, which is pretty funny. But some authors we will not talk about who have become complicated in their relationships to the work that have been titanic successes. And then, of course, her own interest in Africanness and speculative fiction and futurism. Really, really interesting. 448 pages. I'm nervous here.
I think she earns it, though. We trust
Yeah,
Nnedi.
I definitely we're going to give you a chance. But anyway, I'm really looking forward to reading this, position to, I think, try to take her to a new level of appreciation and readership than the real ones who know sci-fi, I think, know, but it really hasn't broken out too much beyond that. And I'm hoping that this does it and warrants it at the same time.
Spoiler alert. This comes out on January 7th, our episode.
Yes.
January 21st is my episode with Nnedi Okorafor.
Yay!
Talking
Great
about
job.
Death of the Author.
The print run ratio is weird. The standard edition has a 30K print run, and the special is 150, so a 5-to-1.
Interesting.
I don't
They're
know.
just trying to shovel people towards those special editions because they look so nice in bookstores.
Or is that what people want? I don't know, Schinsky. I mean, you and I don't care about, well, I'm not going to say the word that puts you on edge. We don't care about that particular book packaging technique.
It's interesting. I was listening to, I don't remember, somewhere someone was talking about often what they'll do in the UK is publish in paperback. And then if
Yeah.
a book is a success, then they start publishing in hardback. And that is a great system. Who do we need to write to?
I know. It's beautiful. Because instead, we get the thing where they all come out in hardcover. And when it's successful, they keep it in hardcover for 6 years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I have tendonitis in my thumb and I need to, it's very hard to hold
This
it
is an
for too long.
accessibility concern.
Yes. Thank you. I need to feel seen by the book publishers. But yes,
I mean-
Nnedi Okorafor, we're very excited about her.
I have some news for you about where that's going to fall on the list of publishers' DEI priority.
This is gay rights. Jeff almost spit all over.
Sorry, I shouldn't have done that. That was a
And Jeff
tactical
spit take.
error.
That's a rare thing of
It's a
beauty.
rare
You should
thing,
feel good
yeah.
about that, Jason.
God, I feel so good.
The man uses like one exclamation point a year in a text, and if I get it, the
Well, I
exclamation
no, it's
point,
whenever Haley's comic comes around, I get out a post-it and say, you've got one to use.
Because it looks like it.
No, I mean, yeah.
just
I
rare
hadn't
and
thought
special.
about
Looks like
that,
it
but-
looks like a comment.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right.
That reminds me. I have one in my. I have one in the chamber that I can fire.
Rebecca, what else do you have on your list?
Okay, so I have A Flame, Learning from Silence by Pico Iyer. He is a travel writer who I've only recently come to. I love travel writing. And he mentions in several of his books that he goes on these retreats, basically, several times a year to a Benedictine hermitage, like where a bunch of monks live in Big Sur, California. What makes this interesting is he's not religious at all, but you can go and stay and have like a silent meditation retreat. Basically, you roll your own. And he has gone there hundreds of times over the last 30 years. And this is a book about stillness, about like the 30 years that he has been going to this monastery and how he has changed and how it has changed. Meditation's a big part of my life. I love a creative take on writing about it. And a travel book that's also about meditation is a thing that I'm not going to be able to resist. So this is my like one for me on my.
This is
most
sort of how I
anticipated
feel about
list.
food books, I think.
Tell me more.
I want to be able to go there.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the last time
So,
that
Jason,
I read one
you
of
could only read about things you don't like, is what I'm hearing. It
That's
sounds
essentially-
disgusting, and it's a
I know.
hellscape dystopia.
Right.
I'm in.
or you
Right.
just throw yourself into it. Like this
Yeah.
is, I mean, on Black Friday, I got a like travel discount email from one of the tour companies that I've used in the past. And it was like, do you want to go to Slovenia? And 3 hours later, I was buying tickets to Slovenia.
Good for you.
Lean in.
Good for you. No, I don't. That is not true. I appreciate that a book will inspire me to want to go somewhere and see the world in a way that I
you
maybe
go.
hadn't before.
Yeah.
One of my favorite books of 2024 is Havoc by Christopher Bolin.
Mhm.
Oh, I haven't read
And it's a super fun. It's being billed as a thriller. It's not really a thriller. It's like a Hitchcockian, like hotel slow burn pseudo thriller. But it takes place in Luxor, Egypt, and all I wanted to do the whole time was go to Egypt. So I feel it.
I love that. Yeah. So that's mine.
I'll do my one for me since you broke the seal on
Okay.
being narcissistically interested in our own reading interests. This is called Foreign
Can't
Fruit,
get a break.
A Personal History of the Orange by Katie Go. I believe G-O-H is the last name, coming out from Tin House, May 6th. No page count, Jason, so we have to furrow our brow at the metadata around that. So this book started out as a history of the orange. One of the running bits on our show is that I read the wrong book about the history of the apples, and fell in love with it.
What do you mean
And
the wrong book? Oh, it's
well,
called the wrong book? Or you
no,
didn't read the right
I was
book?
trying to read a book called The Orchard, and I read a different book called The Orchard and fell in love with it and have been non-ironically proselytizing for it ever since.
The right, wrong book.
The right,
Yeah.
wrong book. So this author sounds like she starts out wanting to write a cultural history of the orange that's about colonialism and transnational trade and all the things that go into sort of the making of modern international foodways. And then as she kind of uncovers her own personal history, she is let me see the hyphen here, Chinese, Malaysian, Irish person who also is queer at the same time. So like a lot of this comes out of like the history of oranges with like oranges aren't the only fruit. Like there's other things going on here that I think are interesting, but a personal history of the orange as the colon after the title of your book is going to get me 1000% of the time. A personal history of the more minor thing, I'm like, I don't know how someone's going to pull off 220 pages and keep my interest. Generally they do. And that is from Tin House suggests it's going to be literary and interesting. So that's my one for me that maybe only be on my list of most anticipated 2024.
I love a good like narrative nonfiction literary situation.
I think you've gotten good validation over the last couple of years for the selection of Paved Paradise, which is about parking lots.
Parking lots. Yeah, that's a good one. Blows your mind.
Done very well, and people still tell us that they appreciated the recommendation. So like we've got some proof of concept for the Jeff niche.
Is Paved Paradise like...
It's a play on the Joni Mitchell song.
Yeah.
Well, no, obviously. I mean, I guess what I'm asking, like, what kind of story is it? Is it someone's personal story?
No,
is it like
it's
the
not.
history
He's a
of
social
parking
scientist,
lots?
like how parking has shaped American culture, right? How our cities are built, how we account for things, zoning. There's this unbelievable story about how a private equity firm bought the rights to the Chicago parking meters and destroyed the city's ability to change itself for like 25 years. And then when you'll start seeing like, look at all the real estate given up to cars, right? Like when I lived in New York, you could street park your car for free in Brooklyn. And it's like, that's 160 square feet of real estate. That's the equivalent of like $200,000 that I just get for free that we just give to like that kind of stuff. It's
Interesting.
mind-blowing.
Okay. I appreciate it.
If you have a very small mind, it'll blow your mind because it doesn't take very much. Not much gunpowder needed.
Yeah. I love like a personal story. I mean, I'm happy to read a book like that,
Mhm.
but for me, like there was a book, one of my
what's a good
first
example of that?
nonfiction that I really liked was called Why Peacocks that came out a
Oh.
few years ago. And it was the story of a guy who got a phone call from a friend and there were like peacocks in the yard and he like essentially adopted 2 peacocks, and it was the story of how he and his family basically became
Absolutely.
peacock farmers
Great.
from this
Yep.
like one random thing, and then he learned so much about peacocks because of this. Anyway, that's like an
Yeah.
example.
Those impulsive, like, it'll be fine, and then how it all worked out.
Sure.
I love those stories. Yeah.
Rebecca,
I
would you call
loved-
that a subgenre of the fiasco man?
Yes, I would
literary
call it
genre? Okay.
yes. Fiasco
Oh.
Man is it's a character, it's a vibe that exists on our show of kind of
Interesting.
Fiasco Man is like Florida Man's cousin. But
I think I'd probably like Fiasco Man more than Florida Man.
I think that you
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
as well.
Fiasco man's rallying cry is how hard can it be? And they get themselves into horrible trouble.
Yeah. Like my husband is on the roof with a rickety ladder doing a thing, and Jeff is getting a text like Fiasco Man rides again.
So fun. Love it. Of course, another example is Bianca Bosker's Get the Picture.
Yes. Oh, so good.
Like firsthand experience doing something and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Have you read
Um,
Cork Dork, her first one?
I
When she's in the
listened to
wine
it.
world?
Yeah. So fun.
It's
Not
so fun, it
only
becomes a shtick, right? I mean, I guess just to follow up on that, because then it becomes you
Mhm.
don't want it to be too much of a gimmick, right? It has to be real. Like you actually lived with peacocks, not I'm looking for something to write a book about. Let me go get
Well,
some peacocks and make
Yeah.
it weird.
Then you cross into AJ Jacobs land.
Right. Yeah.
who is also the nicest guy in the world.
Yeah, he's great.
But he's got that
right.
corner. Don't go. That's corner's
Yeah.
occupied. Don't go
Yeah.
over there.
Rebecca, was that your whole list?
Well, I mean, I have some more that I can dip into.
No, that's
since-
okay. I know that Jeff like has a whole list. So I'm
Well,
curious.
I don't know. I mean,
if
I
there's
don't want
something
to. I don't want to
else, but-
belabor the point. I
mean-
thought you might have had the Karen Russell on your list, Rebecca. No?
I was holding my powder for the Karen Russell, but I'll talk about an August release just very
Okay.
briefly.
Ooh.
Catabasis. I don't know how you pronounce it. It's the new R.F. Kuang. It's coming out in August. I missed the boat on Babel because it's like Jeff is a good screener for me and was like, this is more in the hard sci-fi realm than
Yeah.
you're going to want to be. But I loved Yellowface. And here is the log line that got me. It's Dante's Inferno meets Susanna Clark's Piranesi. Dark academic fantasy. If I want to
Interesting.
do dark academic fantasy with anybody, I want to do it with R.F.
Yeah.
Kuang.
I dig
it's-
that.
I'm into it.
Who maybe can do anything at this point. We're at
I
the
think
point
she
where
might be.
can
She might be able to
maybe
do
be able
anything.
to do anything. Let me just shout out the Karen Russell, which is March 11th. March 11th is a big release day this year. Also my birthday, so I'm really
Yes.
looking forward to that. So Karen Russell is a little bit where I don't need to know what the synopsis is because it's going to be interesting and zany, and then you have no sense of where it's going. It's set in Nebraska during the Dust Bowl, and then someone called the Prairie Witch serves as a bank vault for people's memories. Sure.
What's
I-
it
I'm gonna
called?
The Antidote from Knopf on March.
Oh
11th.
yes, the cover is great.
It's
Yeah.
very cool. Very.
It's been a
cool.
while
Kind
since
of,
we heard from Karen Russell, too.
Yeah, it's been a while, and her last novel was Swamplandia, which is is that 10 years old at this point? I don't have the dates in front of me. So Karen Russell for me is an event, and I think to get out on this, if I were to make a list of like the 20 books of the year that maybe the whole industry will be paying attention to, because Detransition Baby was such a crossover hit, I think Tori Peters' new book, also coming out on March 11th, called Stag Dance, which is a novel and 3 novellas, and it's 304 pages. I don't know if there's some sort of TARDIS situation going on for how they're cramming all that in there. But the follow-up to a sensation is always worth paying attention to.
Mhm.
An extraordinarily interesting writer. And this one is from Random House, not from One World, which I don't know if there's anything to read into that necessarily, but I'm really looking forward to this. Funny, there's a lot going to go on here. The comps are Jeff Core of George Saunders and Jennifer Egan, Schinsky Core 2, I will say.
Yep.
So I'm really looking forward to this. And I thought maybe it was too obvious, but I'm not going to get out of the show today without acknowledging
pick.
that I know that you know that I know it exists.
I mean,
I
Jason had the
appreciate
book
that.
like right
I
there in
appreciate that.
hand.
Yeah.
He didn't have to
I
reach
know.
very far for it. It was
No, well,
like,
that was, I get to have my Vanna moment. Um, you just said something that I almost feel opposite about, the making sure to pay attention post sensation, or however you phrased it.
Yeah.
I almost feel like that is harder for an author.
No, I think it
Um,
is hard. But as like an observer of someone's career, it's like this is a critical moment, right? Is this
it's
a
a lot of
one-off or is this
scrutiny.
are they a thing
yeah,
now?
I would maybe say that next book, the one after that one,
Oh,
is the one
yeah.
to.
See, I'm allergic to hype. So the thing that
Uh-huh.
happens to me is if I don't read the thing before the hype train kicks off, I will not read it. And then I need to wait and hear like the second book is good. And then if I like the second book, I will go back and read the first
Yeah.
one and be like, oh, I get it. Like I just read Sally Rooney for the first time this year because I completely missed the train on the rest of them.
Well, so I am a very new reader, and I was talking to somebody at the Texas Book Festival, and I sort of realized perhaps why I was so apprehensive to read. And she was talking about how reading is such a communal experience.
Mm,
And I had felt like I had missed the boat on so many things, and there was no way of catching up. And so when I got my very first galley working
Oh,
for an arts and culture center, and I was able to, for the very first time, be ahead of something,
yeah.
that really changed my perspective. And being able to have conversations sort of in the moment has changed my reading entirely.
yeah.
I read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow 6 months before it was
Uh-huh.
published, and I was like, this is such a special book. I can't wait.
It's
And
really
so,
exciting.
yeah, and really, it's getting to talk to Nettie this morning, I think, is a great example. I'm just
Mhm.
like, well, this is so far before your pub day, and I cannot wait for the world to experience this really interesting and special journey.
Yeah. And
Um,
I think now that you're like in the industry and you get the early copies of things too, like that's such a fire hose to try to drink
Yep.
from that it shifts your perspective on ever actually feeling behind. Because it's like, oh, we're all just permanently behind forever.
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
there are more books. There are already too many books for any of us to catch up. Like you want to face your mortality, you're never going to read them all.
Never.
It's
Well,
very helpful for that.
and it's also for me, and I'm sure you two feel this way too. There's an element of once it hits pub day, it's old.
Yeah, it's always tough to know, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't know when or if anyone that listens to what you do on a pod or reads an email is ever going to read any of the books you ever talk about. Like
Yeah.
we did a survey on our podcast of one of the books we talk about all the time, Gilead by Marilyn Robinson. And like, how many of you have read the book we talk about the most? And not even half had read it. So, which makes sense because there's so many books out there. So how do you figure out? And I think the only way to really do it is to talk about what you care about and let your
Sure.
passion and enthusiasm be the thing that people grab onto rather than not it's this book versus that book.
I meant old for you,
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
right? You're the book has come out, and you're like, someone asked me if I'd read Long Island Compromise and couldn't believe that I hadn't read it, and I was like, well, she wasn't going to be on the podcast, and the book wasn't
Yeah.
sent to me, and I have a giant stack of
Yeah.
a gajillion other things sitting around me.
There's
I
just
just
way
haven't
too
had
many.
yeah.
There's
So
just
it's like
too
I'm
much.
reading books for March and April now, so I'm like, I
Yeah.
can't.
Especially like with the way your show works, where you're talking to a lot of authors and you are trying to read months ahead of time, that
Yeah.
really it's challenging to feel like you're current when things that are coming out you read months ago. Like,
Right, exactly. It's
yeah,
so
we're always
fascinating.
trying to time like, okay, are we going to do a new release, like a book club episode about like the new Sally Rooney the week that it comes out?
Uh-huh.
That means we're going to wait and read it right as it's coming out. But then you're in the sort of no man's land of like, what if it's not actually good? Can we get a good episode out of it
Yeah.
anyway? There's a lot of
Yeah.
fun little
Well, and
complexities.
some behind the scenes insider baseball, we're recording this a month before it gets
Mhm.
released, and when I'm recording for your show, we're recording it the day before it gets
Yeah.
released. And so
Yeah.
it's the way that we're able to or not to do things is very funny.
Yeah. This is only our second year, like actually planning out the content for our podcast. So out of the
More of a
13
short order cook, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yes.
That's how we tend to make our show.
Honestly, if I it gets very complicated that I have to read the books. I mean, I guess I don't have to, but it is important to me to read the books.
It makes a
People
better
can
interview
tell.
for sure.
Yeah, no, when I said to Nettie something about the end, she was like, "You read through the end?" I was like, "Yes, of course I read through the end."
Doesn't that
Oh,
make
yeah,
you feel
you should-
special when you talk to an author and they know that you've read the book?
Yeah.
And that's unusual. That always
Yeah.
Wild to
as a
me.
Gold Star homework kid, that's always blown my mind about
Yeah.
what the sort of, I guess, standard interaction they have with someone who's talking to them about.
There are 2 books in all the interviews I've done that I didn't finish, and I told them, and they were
Oh,
like
okay.
very, very, very long, and I just
Yeah.
couldn't do it. Tell the listeners about Book Riot.
So Book Riot, the original tagline was always books, never boring. Book
Oh.
Riot is the largest independent publication about books and reading in North America. We have a website, bookriot.com, where you can find new things every day. The idea is not everything is for everyone, but if you care about books and reading, you should be able to find something on any given day that resonates for you. We have an explicitly politically progressive mission. We always have. So our content is feminist. It's inclusive. We make sure that, we're not publishing lists of things that are all by straight cis white men, that kind of thing. We also have 35 newsletters about all genres and areas of interest in books and reading. So, all the usual suspects, the mystery, thriller, historical fiction, romance. Today in Books is one that Jeff and I take turns writing. That's a roundup of each day's big headlines from the world of books and reading, or the days where there are no big headlines. It's a roundup of some headlines from the world of books and reading.
Barely interesting leaks that we happen to find.
Right.
Uh-huh.
We have In Reading Color, which is specifically about books by and about people of color. Our Queerest Shelves is the newsletter that Danica Ellis writes for us that's specifically books by and about the LGBTQ community. We have Literary Activism, which is what it sounds like. Kelly Jensen is one of our longtime editors, and she's become a leading reporter in the country, really, about the push to ban books and how deeply connected it is to the right-wing efforts to minimize and erase people of color and LGBTQ folks and trans folks from public life. So she's covering that. Book Riot's always been activist in that way. And then, of course, we have a bunch of podcasts. So the Book Riot podcast started as a weekly news and talk show about the headlines from the world of books and reading. It's relevant for both folks who work in the industry and generally interested, passionate readers. We also have a second episode every week now that's a little bit more on the pop culture side, where we might talk about the New York Times Top 100 list, or we're talking about an adaptation that recently came out where we read the book and watched the movie together, that kind of thing. And then there are podcasts for the other genres as well. So you can find us in your podcatcher of choice at Book Riot, the Book Riot podcast, or find us online at bookriot.com and make your way to whatever forms of media you want.
So fun. And for anyone who's curious about my queer books that I'm most looking forward to, head on over to the Book Riot podcast to hear those. Rebecca and Jeff, anything else you want to say to the Gays Reading listeners?
Oh, thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, this was a hoot. Thanks so much.
Thank you for being here. A hoot?
Yeah, I'm in
This was a
Midwestern,
hoot.
right?
Jeff
Yeah.
O'Neal, Book Riot.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Going on the website.
That's right. The comp is a hoot and a howl. Yeah, it's a hoot meets a howl.
And a howl.
Both a hoot
can't.
and a howl. You've really made it, Jason.
Oh my God. With or without an exclamation point?
Oh,
It's
I think we got to do a
implied.
second podcast together before you earn the exclamation point from Jeff.
Well, we're about to, so I can't wait. And I have one thing to say before we go that is an important thing for us to remember beginning this new year. Carpet diem.
Carpet DM.
I like how you picked up on that thread.
Transitions and circling back. Those are two of my favorite things. I also love that Jeff's camera follows him.
I know. Do you know that your camera does this, Jeff? It auto
Oh, it's mind
zooms?
control. Yeah, it's
Okay.
taken we have an understanding.
So you just did this terrific head roll, and it followed you. It did a whole nice pan. It was
So you
amazing.
can get all the laundry.
Yes,
I really,
we're really
Jason,
bringing it back to the beginning.
You are my new favorite person for just starting with thanks for making your bed. That's
We keep it real on Gays Reading. Come on, that's very authentic. I am so excited
Me
to have today's guest gay reader. You might know him from Bookstagram's Reels and his fabulous Reels. You might know him as a fourth grade teacher of the year. You might know him as one of the biggest fans of The Notebook, the musical.
Accurate.
It's also very possible you bought Sperry topsiders from him when you lived in Denver. The one and only Brad Summerville.
Oh my gosh. The fact that you know an alarming amount about me and to be fair, my reels, I haven't made very many recently, but hopefully that changes.
So you're lazy is what you're telling me.
No, I'm just busy.
Brad, I'm so happy to have you here.
Yes, I'm so excited. A little nervous, but I'm getting through that, pushing through that.
You have nothing to be nervous
It's
about.
long.
Honestly, one of my favorite facts about you is that you have always been a very tremendous supporter of gays reading, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, since the inaugural episode. And that was back when I first got into like the social media aspect of books, and I just ate up every single episode you released.
Yeah, one of your bios, it's deep on the internet, doesn't mention books at all and talks about how outdoorsy you are. And I was like, oh, Brad went from outdoors to indoors.
Well, I was living in Colorado, so I felt like that had to be an element of my lifestyle at the time. But I definitely switched. I'm now a stay inside and get under a warm blanket and read a book person, which I much prefer.
I know. Like a married old man now. You are here to talk about your most anticipated upcoming queer books.
Yeah.
Because I am not really talking about mine on this episode, because listeners can hear what I'm talking about over on today's episode of the Book Riot podcast, which I'm so thrilled to be on. So here you are my guest gay reader for this very specific reason. I want to know, what are you most excited about this year coming up? What's one of the first ones that you have on your list?
One of the first ones. It actually comes out today. It's an indie author. It's called The Haunting Between Us by Paul Michael Winters.
Tell me more.
Yeah, he wrote a book last year called Together in a Broken World, which is like a post-apocalyptic YA, two teens against the world. But this one is another YA book. One of the main characters lives across the street from a haunted house, and a boy and his father move into the house to flip it because that's what they do. And then the story unfolds from there. But I'm excited about it because I really liked his other work, and I've heard really great things from other people who've reviewed it already. So I've tried to stay away from YA recently, but just because I've read so much of it, I like to mix it up.
Oh, sure.
That one I definitely want to read.
To go backwards for a second in my introduction of you, not only are you a great bookstagrammer, a great hang, but also I love that you are such a huge champion for LGBTQIA plus books on your page. It is very common to see you reading queer books. So that was another reason why it was so important to me to talk to you today.
Yeah, I never really set out to do that. And once I got into that book community, it opened myself up to other perspectives and authors that I wouldn't pick up on my own, or I wouldn't pursue otherwise. And the amount of queer stories that are being written and published, whether traditionally or self-published, is just phenomenal. When you compare it to, it can still be better, but phenomenal compared to growing up.
Oh, sure. Well, you say phenomenal. It's also sort of endless. And that's part of what you're saying compared to growing up.
Yes. Too many for me to
Yeah.
read because I want to read them all, but
Sure. Well, it's also funny that, we both grew up in Florida. So we both, to see sort of what Florida has become, especially in the world of books, is sort of tragic.
yeah. But I think that the cool thing is that it's so much more accessible to people. The people who want to read those books can. And
Absolutely.
I don't remember that ever being a thing growing up.
Mm-hmm. All right. What else is on your list?
This one is called Passing Through a Prairie Country. It's by James. Oh, you know it?
I do.
Yes. That one looks really good to me. It's an indigenous author, and it's about this like dark entity that resides in a casino on a reservation, and it follows one of the patrons of that casino and then a documentarian that comes in, not to investigate like the dark force, but to like, I don't know. It looks good. I've been into like horror. I think it's supposed to be really funny too. So
That almost made my Book Riot list, but it didn't. So I'm very glad that it is on your list because it's on my list in spirit. So
queer horror is such like a fascinating genre to me. Horror in general is not something I would normally pick up, but
well, horror I think is very queer, sort of historically.
yes. Oh yeah, 100%. So it lends itself to like telling, like adding that queer element, like more intentionally, just adds like another layer to an already queer coded genre. But
which is a good segue. Oh no, sorry. Finish what you were
Oh
saying.
yeah, segue away, please.
I was going to say, which is a good segue to another book that's on your list. And to be very clear, I don't know all of the books on your list. I only told you what's on my Book Riot list, and this one we shared, and so it's also in the horror space. So tell me.
Yes, that one is The Lamb by Lucy Rose. That is about a mother and daughter who live in a cabin in the woods and who lure people into their cabin and then kill them and eat them.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
do you have any happier books on your list?
happy? Oh my gosh.
Honestly, you could say no.
I do have one. I'm assuming it's happy. This one's called Futbolista by Johnny Garzavilla. And it's about a freshman in college who plays soccer and then who gets tutored by another guy. And he's trying to just figure out his life and who he's supposed to be, who he's allowed to be, and who he wants to be.
And one thing leads to another.
Yes. You know, I had to have one romance in there.
What is your Steam threshold?
Listen, I don't have a really high Steam threshold.
That's what I assumed that.
Here's the thing. Oh, you've read stuff by M.A. Wardell, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That was like my first ever steamy read. I've never read anything with spice before his books. And
I've only read Mistletoe and Michigas, and I wouldn't say there's a ton of steam in there.
You wouldn't?
No, there's not like sex on every other page.
Okay. Then my threshold is very low. Listen, I read this book over my winter break for school, and I was like, this is the spiciest book I've ever read. And I'm not a spice reader, so like I'm sure some people would read it and be like, this is so tame, which you kind of just did to me with Mistletoe and Michigan.
Not that it was tame, but it wasn't like super spicy to me.
Well, if they're doing it on every other page, when do they fall in love?
While they're lovingly looking into their eyes.
I need some more romance than that.
All right.
But it's just me.
Brett, if you're listening.
He's still home. He's probably out buying flowers for me right now.
Oh, you're a sweet husband.
He's not. He's like getting salt for the snow.
Oh, look at you guys, domestic.
Yeah.
That's very sweet.
Anyway, why do you ask about that? About the spice level?
No. Just you were talking about romance. You had to have one on your list, and so I know that like people have their own threshold. Like if there's too much spice, then it's not of literary enough, or if there's not enough spice, it's not like romance enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I don't
people
know
have a lot of opinions.
I don't know if this one is gonna have spice in it. It might, but I don't.
Okay. All right. What else you got?
All right, this one again, not a happy one. Gosh, why do I do
That's
this to
okay.
myself? This one's also on your list though, The Lilac People by Milo Todd, which is it's set during World War II, and a trans man and his girlfriend flee, and they hide in isolation on a farm and come up with different identities. And then at the end of the war, they come across a young trans man who's escaped a concentration camp, and they protect him, but not from the Nazis, from the Allied forces who are coming in and arresting all of the queer prisoners. Which, when I was reading about this book, I went down I see it in your hand, and I'm so jealous. I went down a rabbit hole of I was like, did that really happen? And it did. They arrested, once they freed all of the queer prisoners, they put them right in jail, which is wild to me. Which, I mean, but also makes sense because why not?
Yeah, no, of course. And it's billed as All the Light We Cannot See meets In Memoriam, which say no more.
And I loved In Memoriam so much. Oh, that's what stopped me when I was reading it. I was like, In Memoriam, say less.
Right. Say less.
Say less. Yes. Did you read Infinity Alchemist by Case and Calendar?
No.
Okay. The sequel to that comes out this year, and I'm really excited about it because I really enjoyed that. It has a lot of great queer rep, poly rep. I won't go into what the second one's about because it gives away the first, but it's basically Chaos King, yes. But I really like Case and Calendar as an author, so I think they do a really good job building their characters and building their world. So I'm excited for that. That's a fantasy.
Cool. That's a fantasy.
Yes. Going back to my roots, basically alchemy, the study of magic, is only limited to a certain few. And so the main character, who is trans, studies magic and then gets caught, but then makes a deal that his tutor will keep teaching him secretly, and then things unfold. But there's some great queer rep, non-binary rep, poly rep.
There's a lot of queer fantasy stuff happening these days.
Probably more than I have time to read.
Even aware of. Yeah. Well, right. That's the problem, is the having time to read.
Well, that's the really cool thing, is that you asking me to look into books upcoming that I'm excited about. I usually just think okay, 3 weeks ahead of the current date, but this really gave me an opportunity to go in and read more, and there's a ton coming out.
Okay. You have, I don't want to use the turn of phrase come under fire because that sounds very dramatic, but there have been lots of conversations on social media recently about the word queer. And I feel like this is a very interesting time, space, and place to talk about that.
Yeah.
Do you want to give the listeners a little bit of context?
Yeah, of course. So I do focus a lot on LGBTQ stories and voices, and a lot of times I'll refer to a book as queer, or I'll use queer as kind of an umbrella term to capture everybody within the community, just so I don't exclude anyone in that. And when I speak or when I talk about a book. Recently, I have gotten some pushback from certain people in the community that the word itself is offensive, and so I posted about it and I talked about it, and I just wanted to explain where I come from when I use the word and what it means to me, because I'll never tell someone what words represent to them, what a word means to someone else. And I can totally understand why queer to certain people within the community would be hard to hear. I mean, I think even for myself, I would never have used the word queer 3 years ago. But I've grown in my understanding of the community and of what that word represents to so many people that if I didn't share my understanding of it, then I would, I don't know.
Well, it's interesting because I feel like I'm in a relatively similar position as you. In a way, there's something about queer is easier to say than LGBTQIA+. And if we were to take those as letters and turn it into a word like look à toi plus. Like that's not a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's something about reclaiming the word queer, but also, we are, I think, living in a moment where we're sort of like diluting the binary in a good, meaningful way. And I think, like, to me, in my mind, queer is sort of the representation of like the puddle that the binary has melted into. It's like a weird way to put it, but that
makes sense. That's great. That's a great way to visualize it almost.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of publishers are using queer in their marketing now. Like if the story is not a cisgender straight man and a cisgender straight woman, which is interesting that we moved into a space or a time when that's now an active part of marketing a story or a novel to other people, which I love. I love that that's so common now.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. Like I am gay and I am a reader, and so that's why this is Gay's Reading. But that doesn't mean it's only gay stories. And sometimes I use the word gay as the word for the puddle, but that is not correct, right? Like I should be using the word queer, or for me, that's how I feel, or I should be saying LGBTQIA+. And I think for me, saying queer and sometimes saying gay is summarizing the sort of entirety of the rainbow spectrum.
Yeah. I think ultimately it comes down to intent and how you're viewing it. And regardless of like other people's interpretation of that or the word, like you are always using it from a good, well-meaning place. And so there's power in that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I think that's a very accurate way of talking.
It's hard because I feel like with words, and people could argue all day about it. People love to argue.
People love to argue. Brad, what are you reading right now? Since you are my guest gay reader, I have to know. What are you reading?
Oh my gosh. I am reading 7, I'm not joking you, like 7 books right now. My husband says I'm insane.
7 is a lot. I've read multiple books at a time, but 7 feels a bit.
Listen, I
how do you keep track of them?
I just got a Kindle, which is dangerous. But
look at you.
If I showed you my bedside table, it literally has 7 books. Because sometimes like I'm in the mood for this book or that book. One of the books I'm reading right now is A Little Bit Country by Brian D. Kennedy. It's a YA. 2 boys work at what is the equivalent of like Dollywood, and they fall in love. One's a country music singer and the other one wants to be a chef.
How fun.
Yeah.
And how steamy is it? How spicy is it?
It's not spicy. Zero spice level. Oh, gosh.
Good. That's okay. Brad likes his books vanilla and spiceless. Very wholesome. We love to see it. Brad, where can the people find you? You're all over the place.
Well, I'm in 2 places. They can find me.
I would call that all over the place.
On Instagram or TikTok at Brad Bought a Book, because I just more and more.
You need to change your name to Brad Buys Tons of Books.
Brad needs to stop buying books. This is what it should be.
That's so fun. Well, everybody go follow Brad. He's a great follow. When he makes reels, they're tons of fun. Every once in a while, his husband Brett makes a special guest appearance. Hi, Brett.
Hi, Brett.
Brad, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Jason. I appreciate it. This was fun.
You're the best. Thank you so much for being here. Rebecca, Jeff, thank you so much. Again, everyone, go check out the Book Riot Podcast. I am on their episode today. Like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. If you like what you're hearing, please share with your friends. Follow us on social media at Gays Reading. And I will see you next week. Thanks, everyone. Bye.